Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Wettemann, and this is Patrick, and welcome to The Crunch. Happy New Year. Excited to be here and bring in January 2025 with you all. So is Patrick, right, bud? You're not going to go to sleep, are you? No. Okay, good boy. So, it's that time of year when all of us analysts start talking about what are the predictions for 2025? What are those key trends that we're going to see? And I'm delighted to have on someone who's really well suited to talk about one of the key trends that Bauer is talking about for 2025, which is about the evolution of voice as a channel and really the re-emergence of the importance of voice as a channel as we think about customer experience and employee experience moving forward. So I'd like to welcome my guest today, Josh Feast from Verint. Josh, who has one of the neatest titles, I think, out there as a GM for AI coaching. So you're the boss training all those bots in the gym.
Wonderful to be here.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Super to be here.
So, Josh, I think it's interesting when we talk about sort of the voice channel. There's been so much focus on AI and digital channels over the past year, whereas now we're seeing if I can really digitally enable a lot more of these interactions to be completed in the digital channels, my agents who are there can spend a lot more time on voice. But it also means I need to think about how I'm training those agents to effectively interact in a way when call handle time may not be the most important metric to watch anymore. What are the kind of key things that you're seeing customers look for in terms of metrics for the voice channel?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that voice is increasing in importance. I always think of it as you have a focus on self-service and you have a focus on service, and you really need your service to be good. And I think we're really seeing that. From a metrics perspective, we're seeing focus on three areas. So the traditional efficiency measures like AHT that you mentioned, they're there, of course, they're never going away. You also need your focuses on effectiveness measures. So are you hitting your workflows? Are you getting your upsell, cross-sells? But we see increasing focus as well on experience. Experience is both the customer experience, but also interestingly, if we're talking about a human-driven call, the agent experience or the guide experience. And one of the reasons for that is it turns out that it's two sides of the same coin. In fact, we have some really interesting studies that show that if you have an agent that has a really difficult call with a customer, the subsequent call they have with a different customer will not go as well. So that really makes a big difference if you can really understand both elements.
So it goes really in both directions then. Mm-hmm. Well, I know we often talk about improving the employee experience to improve the customer experience, and people think, well, that's sort of a long tail moving out. But there's a real correlation there. If the agent's having a good day, the customer's like,
call to call, from a call to call basis. Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the predictions that we did back in 2024 was really about the decline of the customer survey and how I really had to do a better job of understanding the customer interaction in real time, rather than sort of going back after the fact to try to gather data. And I know you guys announced the CX-EX bot in December. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and kind of what that does? Because I found that really interesting.
Yeah, delighted to. So the bot does three fundamental things. The first is that listens to conversations as they're happening, looks at how the participants are interacting, looks at what they're saying, and it understands from when you think of it like from the perspective of a third-party observer, is this agent having a good experience or is this customer having a good experience? And it provides a continuous, in-the-moment, real-time measure of how those things are going. As well as that, the bot's coupled with a supervisor experience. So supervisors can get a sort of a virtual walk the floor of how their teams are going. Just as it obviously very important for remote work. You can see just how all your team members are going, how all their calls are going. And easily dip in and listen and understand what's going on. So it provides that sort of in-the-moment visibility.
So really enabling the agent to see how things are going on the call.
The agent supervisor. The team lead. Yeah. So the agent often is in the middle of it. So it's really like to give that visibility into their team. Contact centers are very much a team sport, right? And you really want the team to be fully involved. And this really brings it.
About agents remotely, there's just no way for a supervisor to be listening on all of those calls, even if they're on this.
Yeah. I mean, we used to walk around the floor, but that's not so simple anymore, right? And this buddy provides that capability.
And so, why are customers moving toward this approach? Is it more to scale quality control? Is it to retain agents? I guess, what are the key motivators for them for turning this on?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's business outcomes, right? So everything's always business outcomes. Yeah, that's right. There's a couple of reasons. So first, there's a lot of advantages to really comprehensive real-time measurement of what you're trying to solve for. So the survey approach, which has its place and its advantages, is ultimately going to get a few percentage of customers responding, and you're going to get responses at the tails of responses. So people are very unhappy or potentially very happy. You're not going to get a full understanding of how every call is doing from both a customer and employee experience perspective. And what that means is it's much harder to figure out the root causes of things. So you can't say this, 60% of our calls, this is the reason why right now customers are not having a good time. Right, there could be a product problem, there could be lots of things. So having that continuous understanding makes it a lot easier to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. The second is that real-time continuous measures is kind of an unlock for a number of really important capabilities. So if you can continuously understand how our calls are going, you can do real-time coaching, you can use your EX score to route calls. So for example, if an agent had a really poor call, you could give them a little break before somebody comes on. Also, and as we mentioned before, this visibility to frontline leaders also allows them to check in and coach their team members and get ahead of any potential issues. So it just enables everything to be more responsive if you can be real time and you can be comprehensive.
Why do you think it's taken us so long to get to this point where we're able to do real time or near real time? And what sort of tipped in the past year that's enabled you guys to get there with product?
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. So there's a number of reasons why this is complex. So one is you need a lot of availability of compute, and you need to have very efficient algorithms because you're computing a lot of data, right? And yet it has to be done at an effective price point, right? For the market. I think that sort of availability of compute and cloud and data, I think, has been a really important element of this. The other part of it is there's a science-based element to this. So the way that Verint looks at customer experience, employee experience, is it looks, it's not like only like we think was like this sort of past sort of, you call it like sort of sentiment approach, which is really just positive and negative word choice. And which, you say this call is good, but what if you say, oh, that was really good? There's a difference in terms of how you can say things. And so what we're doing with this is we're layering in an understanding of conversational dynamics, basically linked to how people signal to each other almost unconsciously about their level of engagement in conversations. And so because we're able to tap into that communication stream, which is referred to as the honor signals communication stream, we can get much more reliable measures. And the other thing about this technology is you can take these scores to understand customer and employee experience, and you can run them across different geographies, different call types, all the complexities of very, very large organizations, and get a comparable score. So now you can compare the customer experience in your claims organization with your sales organization, and you actually get a score that matches and gives you a good understanding. So you can look in a more interesting way. So all this took time to develop and took time to prove. These scores and things have been run on very, very large operations, very, very successfully, and with extremely high predictive power.
So the big question then, I guess, becomes how are we training? How are we coaching? Where's the data coming from? I mean, obviously, Verint's history with a deep understanding of voice is really important here. But I'm sure customers are asking about what data sets this is being trained on and how it's managed from a data perspective.
Yeah, I mean, so these scores are developed using originally basic science. So the development started off with about 10 years of basic science at MIT, looking at how people basically exhibit psychological state in conversation. From there, the sort of next level of technology development was sponsored by DARPA and the National Institutes of Health, who are interested in understanding distress in conversations. And so that was sort of built up. It was like a scientific, basic science, applied R&D, and then through Verint, there's been the benefit of being able to look at, very large quantities of interactions across. With Verint has a massive footprint, which enables these scores to be, continuously refined and highly accurate.
Got it. Certainly the CX-EX spot is really interesting for thinking about those, managing those voice channels. But you guys are doing a lot of other things with AI. What are the biggest concerns that you're hearing from customers about AI today?
The big thing. So it's interesting how we've seen the arc go, right? So you dial back a few years, and people were scared that AI might take over or might take over my jobs and other things. But I think what we see now is people are much more aware of sort of the adage that AI is not going to take over my job, but somebody else using AI might, right? So I think that a lot of what the interest is adoption and really getting in and learning. Like when we present to really large teams of frontline leaders and contact centers or large teams of agents, there's a lot of interest, and I think it really comes down to this sort of idea that people understand that there's an opportunity to be, I guess in some ways like super agent or super guide, right? To really have that support around you. Not an easy job, and having AI there to assist you can really make it a lot easier and help you meet your goals a lot better. And so that's what we see. But that's a challenge. Like go back a few years and there was more trepidation, I think, than what we see today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as I think about sort of the interaction between customer and agent, that's really changing as well. I mean, we're seeing much more folks look at, like you said before, how do I think about what my cross-sell and upsell opportunities are? How can I enable my agent to focus on not just clearing the call, but really doing it with satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen tremendous success, and by this I mean it could be 30% increases in revenue through guidance to improve things like cross-sell and upsell. And a lot of it is just, remembering to do it. Right? I mean, so much of it is just getting the confidence. And, if you're not asking somebody if they're interested in services, then you're missing an opportunity, right? I think. And so I think that's almost like a easy win right now.
Mm-hmm. What are you guys thinking about in the agentic space when it comes to voice? How far off do you think we are from really being able to have quality voice interactions with digital agents as opposed to human?
Well, that's a great one. And actually I think there's we think about the rise of voice in general, right? We can there's the rise of voice in the sort of service context, the human to human context, and that grows roughly with GDP, right? And it does that every year, and I think it will continue for the foreseeable. But definitely, recently there's been a big improvement in the quality of voice-based, non-human assistance, and I think a lot of it is, really not having to code all these specific rules anymore in the same way has made a huge difference. And so you can create an experience that's much more interesting and complex without the massive overhead required to maintain it on the software side. So I think that's been, I think, really wonderful. I don't think it replaces humans yet, though. I think we're still quite far from that. But it doesn't mean it hasn't got a lot better.
And the potential to replace or at least replaced portions of IVR that didn't work very well for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's still a a sort of an emotional difference between talking to a human and talking to a non-human. In one case, you're still responsible for solving the problem yourself. In the other case, you've kind of emotionally handed over to somebody else to solve it for you. And they're just kind of different experiences for that reason. But it's truly amazing how much better things have gotten from an automation side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's next for the CX scoring bot and for other bots? What other bots should we be looking at?
Well, no, look, I think Verint's investing in a lot of areas. And one of the areas that I think we're very excited about is the general space of co-pilots. So the general space of augmentation of agents and really beyond agents, frontline teams. There's sort of a series of opportunities there. So one is in real-time scoring, one in supervisor experiences. The other is in real-time coaching, so be able to coach on emotional connection as well as workflow. And Verint's been had made some really impressive investments in they're called wrap-up, so automatic summarization, but allowing you to adapt that and customize that to your needs. There's a lot as well in bringing knowledge and information from upfront IVRs or transfers into a single experience. And I think bringing that all together into a sort of coherent, comprehensive experience is an amazing thing. And the Verint platform is quite remarkable in its breadth, but also how deep each piece is. I don't think there's any vendors that have all those pieces and have them all be close to best of breed or very close to best of breed. I think that's quite cool. And so I think what I hope we'll see this year is sort of that will become clearer and clearer to the market.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I hear from customers a lot is concern that their data isn't ready for AI, or they're not going to be able to tune the AI to actually get accurate enough to do the kind of containment that they want.
Right.
And I know a lot of that is flavored by sort of early experimental projects where they tried to do things on their own with ChatGPT or with other LLMs and just found that they couldn't get the level of accuracy that they needed. Where would you say customers' data hygiene in general is today for really being able to take advantage of AI? And what do we need to do to kind of push that needle?
Well, that's an important question. So you have sort of you have a couple of, broadly speaking, two different approaches, right? You can come in and you can say, I'm going to kind of do it myself, and I'm going to buy a bunch of building blocks, and I'm going to try and kind of maintain a lot of these applications, almost like internally developed applications that I, as an organization, have and maintain. And as soon as you do that, you're going to get into all those issues, right? Into your hygiene issues, into your management issues. And I think a lot of where customers can go wrong, well, it can be the right decision because that may be the only available option at a certain point. You want to get an early building blocks, all that's there, and you have to do that. But then you quickly discover that it's the operations and maintenance that's the real challenge, right? And that's really the thing that gets everybody. The alternative, and this is, I think, where Verint focuses, is you go to a applications vendor. So the point there is that those systems are purpose built and maintained professionally, right, for the use case. So then the vendor is now responsible, and they're going to take on that burden of the operations and the hygiene and all those things. And so that I think is another approach. And I think so then it depends on what type of organization you are. Right? Do you want to deal with this stuff, or do you not want to deal with this stuff? Right? And organizations will make the decisions that work for them in that front. There's no question in general that AI is kind of data based, but you have an organization that's bringing in an application that they've already done a lot of pre-work. Like, for example, when you bring in like the CXX scoring bot, you don't have to train it. it already runs. You have to do it doesn't matter how your data hygiene, it doesn't matter because it's just going to compute the scores on your calls because it already knows how to do a good job because of all the work that's been done in advance. Right? When you come with a bigger block, then you're dependent on your data. But somebody coming in with a developed solution isn't going to be entirely, wholly dependent on the customer's data.
So it's not as dependent on the customer's data, but rather on the work you guys have kind of done.
Yeah, done in advance. Yeah, and as it should be.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of the early cloud computing days where everybody was trying to figure out what was actually in the cloud platform to deliver these applications.
Is it in the cloud or in the cloud? Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
What's old is new again, I guess.
Yeah.
So as we think about kind of voice as a channel, are there new metrics that we're looking at? I mean, you talked about sort of employee experience and customer experience, but how do we need to think differently about what we're measuring?
Well, I think, and I was fortunate enough to read some of your work before. I think there were a couple of things that were important. I think you referenced value-based, and I think that's remains like the standard that we need to hold ourselves to, right? And that's such a difficult element because in the contact center, everything's changing all the time, and we don't know what caused what necessarily, but we can, right? And so one of the things that Verint believes strongly and I believe strongly in is the idea that you should be able to take an application and the application should be able to measure the value it's providing for you, right? And it should be able to do that because it has a good sense of what is the behavior, for example, that it's trying to change, whether it actually succeeded in changing that behavior, and then what is the economic benefit that you got from it. And I think that kind of value-based understanding, I think, is sort of like that next level that comes in, that's sort of like the result of the input, measures. We mentioned efficiency and effectiveness and experience. But if we can kind of take those kind of input measures and come to value, then I think we've kind of really managed to advance. But it's real work, especially because you have to have a good sense of, experiential design and like understanding, that this factor was the reason and not this other factor that as well.
And that's a little bit different for every customer too. So it's not quite as much from an out of the box perspective.
So that value element, no question, that's a customer specific thing. Yeah, it's a business line thing.
But I'm sure you guys are thinking about how do I use the data and the telemetry to go back and help customers understand what those real outcomes are, those real business outcomes.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, if you often, things like continuous CX and EX are sort of one of the, key missing elements because, we know like our customers know as they have these models, they know how CSAT is going to predict lifetime value, for example, but they haven't had the link between experience and CSAT and life, so they can add that in. So then your focus becomes too short term because you're only able to measure shorter term things. But you really need to have that longer term picture in this kind of competitive market.
You've got to be tactical, but also have that longer view and understanding where the deltas are over the long term.
No question.
Excellent. Well, it's certainly really interesting conversation. We could spend so much more time talking about how you coach AI and how you coach those bots in the gym, but we've only got a few minutes left, so it's crunch time. Crunch time. You ready? Yeah. So Patrick has a few personal questions for you, Josh.
Oh.
What talent would you most like to have?
I would like to be a better writer.
Writer.
A writer. Yep. I would like to be a better writer if I could. I feel I appreciate people that are able to write really well, and I would love to improve.
What do you most value in your friends?
I think probably empathy and independence.
Empathy and
independence. Yeah.
What is your most treasured possession?
I try not to be too attached as a general rule. Probably my old photos.
Your what?
Old photos.
Old
Memories.
photos.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And finally, this is Patrick's favorite one. If you were to die and come back as any person or thing, whom or what would you be?
Any person or thing? That is a good one. That's a tough one. I'll tell you who I was, most impressed by, and we can take that as a thing. But I'm reading about Jimmy Carter. What an amazing gentleman! So, coming back as anybody who was a tenth as impressive as that person, that would be something special.
You know what, Josh? That's a great answer. A timely answer, but a really great one too. Excellent. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up today. Josh from Verint, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on the show. Thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you.